Well, hello everyone. We're back out here in Berea for the introductory press conference of Brown's new offensive coordinator, John DeFilippo. I'm here today with our esteemed columnist, Bud Shaw.
Who's been here before for offensive coordinator hires a few times.
6 in the last 6 years, right?
Yeah, and 15 and 17, but who's counting?
That's right. So we just spent about a half an hour with John DeFilippo and Mike Pettine. We got all kinds of good information out of them. Bud, what were your first impressions of the new coordinator?
Well, he's an impressive guy, obviously. My overall take on it is that Mike Pettine, who walked into kind of a difficult situation here last year, has just walked into a more difficult situation. He still doesn't have his quarterback identified, and now he's going with a guy who he may feel more familiar with, and I'm sure that's part of the reason why he hired him. But he's also a guy who hasn't done the job before. We've at least seen guys come through here, Kyle Shanahan, Norv Turner, Rob Chudzinski, who have had the job before and have called plays, and you felt like there was some, a little bit more stability there. So this is going to be an interesting dynamic, definitely.
It will, and one of the first things that he said to us was, I don't know if our quarterback is in the building right now. So I thought that was the first thing that stood out to me was, he didn't come in here and say, hey, look, we've got this young guy in Johnny Manziel. We're going to try to work with him and move this thing forward. He admitted right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, he gets kudos for honesty. He's clearly a Pettine guy. Pettine leads the league in being honest about these kinds of things and not trying to sugarcoat stuff. I guess if you're looking for a silver lining, it's the fact that he said he was in a similar situation last year in Oakland and has been a couple times where they didn't know that they were going to get Derek Carr in the draft at this time last year. So who knows? I mean, I happen to believe that the quarterback, he's right, that there will be another quarterback come in here, whether it's Mark Sanchez or whoever it might be, who's probably going to start the season, because based on what we saw of Manziel last year, I don't think any organization could commit to a guy like that.
Right. Well, the truth is they just don't know. And again, both Mike Pettine and John DeFilippo have worked with Mark Sanchez, so that's a name that's going to crop up in free agency. He's going to meet this week with Brian Hoyer, so I think that'll be interesting. They have to figure out what to do with him.
Yeah, I found that interesting to hear that. I don't know what to make of that other than, Brian is still a possibility. It seemed like at the end of the season, Mike Pettine and Ray Farmer were kind of sending off mixed signals about Hoyer's future. But it's smart for Brian Hoyer to keep his options open.
Oh, absolutely. Anything can still happen. You could always keep Brian around in the event that you bring in another young quarterback. I don't know if you want to do the Johnny Manziel, Brian Hoyer dynamic again.
No, I'm not sure you do either. I think though we will see a guy, whether it is Sanchez or not, I think we'll see a veteran guy in here, and I think that's who we'll see start the season at least, and who knows what happens. It's just, how many years have we done this, right? I mean, I'm not pretending that that's the answer, and I don't mean to suggest that Mark Sanchez is a guy that can take them to the playoffs, but I think this situation has the feel of where that's heading.
And you know what? We also asked John DeFilippo, do you think it would be wise to bring sort of an elder statesman onto the staff, a guy who's called plays before? I personally think that would be a good idea. You?
Well, yeah, you asked the question, and certainly the response of both Pettine and DeFilippo led you to believe that that's exactly what they're considering.
I would think so. And they actually did interview a number of guys at the Senior Bowl and in other places that could possibly be brought in here in that capacity. We also talked to Mike Pettine a little bit about Kyle Shanahan leaving and about the investigation with Textgate and things like that. So what stood out to you about those things?
Well, I thought the interesting news, if you want to call it that, is that he said he spoke with investigators who came in here to talk about it. He would not address any of the other issues. He felt that there was, as he said this time last year, there was a perception outside of the building that they would have a hard time interviewing and hiring coaches who had other options. And Mike Pettine's, the embodiment of that. No one else was talking to him to be a head coach last year. He ended up here, and I thought he ended up doing a pretty good job under the circumstances. So maybe John DeFilippo can do the same. Yeah,
and it was funny because Mike Pettine said he knows yesterday everybody was saying, who's John DeFilippo? And he said, look, I think he's ready to do the job. We will, of course, find that out. We'll have lots of stories coming for you today off this press conference, so look for those on cleveland.com, as well as some great coverage from Tom Reed, who's down at the Senior Bowl. Thanks a lot from Berea.